Live. It's
All
live.
right.
Yep.
Blue Chips family, sorry about that. As you can tell, we've got a little bit different circumstances this time around, but despite traveling a ton, we are going to make time for you, of course. The reason we do what we do. For those who don't know, I've been all across Alabama into Mississippi, checking out some of the Army Bowl, or excuse me, All American Bowl prospects being presented their jersey. So we've been following those guys through several stops, including Talia Tagovailoa on Wednesday. So obviously we'll have some information there, but cannot get through a week without Crimson and Blue Chips. And of course, it's Thursday evening, which means the college football weekend begins now as a coworker departs. So that was one of our former teammates there, Kev. So obviously, let's dig into it. We will talk Alabama, Tennessee, pretty big game there. Tennessee hate week might have something to do with this this guy here for a certain viral video from a few years ago. That's that weekend. So obviously, third Saturday in October, a lot to get to there. We will talk SEC, college football picks, recruiting, Q&A, everything, all right here, Crimson and Blue Chips. Producer Kev, you over there?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's dig into it. Where are we starting?
We'll start with recruiting and who you've seen this week, who you got to talk to, any big news that you got to hear or anything like that.
Well, yeah, I guess the biggest item for this show for the Alabama Crimson Tide fan would be Talia Tagovailoa. Spent a lot of time with him yesterday. His family was there. Tua wasn't there, before you ask. He was not there. He was in class. This was during the day. But obviously he was presented with his All-American Bowl jersey, the same game that Tua played in. He will play in 2 years later. So obviously that's quite the connection. And the thing I took away from it, just being there, is just how beloved this family is. I mean, this, we talked about it last week when Tua re-aggravated that knee injury. This is the first family of Alabama. Like, it's over. Like, sorry, Sabins. The Tagovailoas are the first family of the state, at least for right now. It's very clear. Galu, his father, their father, literally gets stopped in the streets for pictures and conversations with people. I mean, it's at a different level. It's at a certain fever pitch at this point that nobody expected. They're still humbled and blown away by all of this, whether it's Tua's accomplishments, Talia's accomplishments, the combination, the university, the state, the area, all of it is still very much overwhelming to them and a bit over their heads sometimes. It catches them off guard, even though it's consistent love and support. So that's the major thing I took away from it. The entire school was there at Thompson High School to celebrate Talia. Obviously, we're there as well. In terms of recruiting, still solid to Alabama. He'll be in Knoxville Saturday, but he'll be there in the stands. He won't be there as a recruit. So obviously, that's encouraging from the Alabama perspective. It's not over. Tennessee's in it. LSU is the bigger threat, in my opinion. And he's not ruling out trips to each of those schools. Again, he'll be in Knoxville, but as far as we know right now, it's not as a recruit. It is like it is every Saturday to see Tua, to sit in the stands with family and enjoy what should be another Crimson Tide victory. So they're still in it, but it's not 100% over. But the time is ticking here. Talia is an early enrollee. So December rolls around, and he's going to sign at that point, December 19th. So obviously, 2 months from right now, pretty much, his recruitment is officially over. So we remember the Army Bowl 2 years ago when Tua was there. The big drama was Najee Harris because he was enrolling early, but there was no early signing period. That was established last year. We might as well call it the Najee rule, really, because all of that drama wouldn't have been possible if that was in place. But when he does get to that point this year, talking about Talia, all of that will literally be behind him because he would have signed his letter of intent early, which, again, the likelihood is still very much Alabama in that conversation. So that's what we gathered from sitting down with those guys. Obviously, he's great representative of Thompson High School, Mark Freeman, a legendary coach. I think he's got 6 state championships. Though that pair has been great in Class 7A. They're 6-1 this year. The only loss came to Hoover, which they beat last year. So they got the rematch in the playoffs in 2017. And we sure as hell won't mind if they get the rematch again in 2018 to settle that score. So everything's kind of rolling for Taulia. He looks good on the hoof, by the way. If you didn't see any photos or any of our coverage, first of all, thanks for not clicking. Second of all, he looks good. Legit 5'11". He's about 205, 210 right now. So he shed a couple of extra, baby weight, whatever you want to call it. He looks good. He looks like he's in midseason form, and things are rolling. He's healthy. He's happy. And everyone has just been blown away by his season and also by Alabama's season. So, again, that's another thing, in addition to all of the obvious, that would really keep Taulia locked in with the Crimson Tide. But it is not 100% over. And I think there's a lot to take away from that, mainly the fact that Tua didn't do it this way. And that's because they'd never been through any of this before. And there was, there was a commitment before he blew up in one sense, meaning he committed to Alabama before he truly became a national prospect, before Oregon offered, before USC put the pedal to the metal, before other schools could get involved for the most part, with the exception of the Ole Misses of the world that were always in there for Tua. So with Taulia, even though he is committed, those other offers are going to continue to be explored. He has long said he wants to play SEC ball. He wants to play in the South. The family's in love with the culture, so he's not going to stray away to the West Coast, which is perception we had at one point. But it is not over because they've never gone through it this way, and they want to explore all of the options before ending the process. But I would be lying if I said I thought he would end up anywhere at this point, but Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So good news on that front, but certainly it's not 100% over at this point. So, so spent time with Taulia. He's got a bunch of teammates that are high-level kids, including Amari Kite, his blindside protector, who is an Alabama commitment as well. Similar boat. Very solid to Alabama. Loves Brent Key. Loves Nick Saban. He's 6'7", 315. So everybody in America wants this kid. The only difference is that he doesn't talk much, and he's been committed for a while. So you don't hear about it as much, but that doesn't lessen the intensity of that recruiting battle from his perspective. Auburn is still pushing. LSU is the common school between the two. They are still pushing. He would like to take visits elsewhere, but nothing is planned beyond trips to Tuscaloosa. So it just feels very similar that, hey, they're committed, they're solid, they're in state, all of the connections, but they're just going to cross their T's and dot their I's just in case something out of the ordinary happens. So I think both guys end up in Tuscaloosa. They're both big-time prospects. Amari Kite, you can't wear 6'7", 315 better than he does. And again, we've got photos, we've got video, all that stuff up at 24/7 Sports, Bama Online. Check all of that out. I mean, the kid carries it well, and he's rock solid with Alabama. The funny thing is that he's this intimidating-looking cat who told us he's still intimidated by Nick Saban, who is a foot shorter than him and a couple LBs lighter as well. So it's funny with the impact that Nick Saban still has, despite his diminutive stature there. So big day at Thompson. A lot of roll tides going down there. Heck, there was a lot of roll tides today in Tuscaloosa as well for the Notre Dame punter commitment, who we spent time with. As soon as I walked into Hillcrest High School, home of Brian Robinson, of course, I heard Dixieland Delight. I heard Sweet Home Alabama. You would think the kid was going to Alabama, but of course he is early enrolling with Notre Dame. And he's a punter from Tuscaloosa, so I know that verbatim news sounds kind of funny to some Alabama fans, that the best kicker, the best punter in state and in the city is leaving and going to Notre Dame instead of Alabama. But obviously Will Reichard, an Under Armour All-American, is headed to Tuscaloosa. So it's crazy, Kev. We're already looking ahead to the end of the season and the last couple of games that some of these guys will play in. It's just wild how much offseason we have. We complain about the lack of padded football. We got 7-on-7 and camps and all this stuff. And then we get to the football season, man, and it just takes off on us. It starts flying by. And yeah, we're already planning postseason events and travel and games and all of that. And it's it kind of sucks, but obviously we still do have football remaining, and we're going to enjoy that as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. More from about Kite. I think he has, and we've talked about it, and we've both said it, that I think he has the chance to be the best one out of the group, out of this 2019 class for Bama. I've watched his film. I mean, like you said, you can't wear 6'7", 315 any better than that kid does. He looks impressive, and for a high school kid that's already big like that, you expect them as they get older and going through high school, you expect them to put on some bad weight and get fat and I'm already committed to Bama, so I don't really have to, keep track of my maintain and all that. But I mean, the fact that that he's looking better and better. I mean, I've seen kids as freshmen that I loved. I won't say names, but like I loved as freshmen, and then like they just never got over that, and then they just kind of got a little sloppy as like sophomores and juniors, and then as seniors trying to lose that sloppiness, and they missed out on offers that they wanted, and now they're other places. But for him to be putting in the work to stay looking as good as he does is impressive for a high school kid, and he's an impressive looking kid all around.
Yeah, and for those unfamiliar, again, he doesn't talk a lot. He's not showcased a lot. He's not very dramatic, but 6'7", 315, a left tackle, and a guy who's going to stay at left tackle. I think that cannot be reiterated enough. This is a blindside protector for 4 years, wherever he ends up, which most likely Alabama. And you said it, Kev. Probably the highest ceiling guy in that Alabama offensive line class. Maybe even if you include Clay Webb. Maybe even if you include Evan Neal. Think about that. So this is a big-time prospect and a guy Alabama needs to keep in the class. In terms of his progress, where he's at, he said that Alabama has been very pleased with his senior season. And here's the key. They're impressed with his football IQ and aggression, 2 areas we didn't know a ton about at this time last year, when it was already apparent that Kite was probably going to end up at Alabama. So think about that. We knew he was a long, finesse, athletic left tackle. You wanted to see a little bit more aggression, and you just didn't know how comfortable he was as a guy who was going to be on that island. So with football knowledge and IQ comes confidence, and obviously aggression is aggression. So he's making steps in the areas you want to see halfway through his senior season, much less before he gets to Tuscaloosa. So he's not only a great-looking cat who's done all the right things, but he's headed in the right direction even before he gets involved with Scott Cochran, which is going to be one of the things I'm looking most forward to from this class of 2019, no matter how it shakes out for Alabama. How soon does Amari Kite get on the field? How immersed in Scott Cochran's program does that kid get? Because holy crap, ceiling when you're talking about Amari Kite. And we're going to take a real close look at him in January at the Under Armour Week. Yours truly will be there, filming all those trench battles. You know I love that. It's my favorite thing to do at that time of year. So cannot wait to get a truly long and competitive look at Amari Kite. To think that his best football is ahead of him is a no-brainer. So let's move on. Let's see. Where else have we been? Well, we mentioned Thompson High School, and they've got a bunch of dudes. Jeremiah Alexander, the next name to know really quick, just today, and the day is not over. We still got a little bit of daylight out there. I'm in a basement, if you hadn't figured that out. There's a window. Look, here we go. Can you guys see the window? A little bit of daylight. Anyway, the day's not done. And the freshman sensation in the state of Alabama that everybody needs to know about, Jeremiah Alexander, Thompson High School, 6'2", 215. Get this. He entered the day with this many offers. Just one. Now he has 6. 3 of the offers that came in today were from the SEC. Florida, very early this morning, then LSU, and then Tennessee too. So kid is literally blowing up today. And Wes Murphy is his D-line coach. You may remember Wes played at Arkansas, played in the NFL for a little bit, offensive, defensive line guy. This guy says Von Miller, Khalil Mack, with a mile body. That's the feeling he thinks this kid has. And obviously, that is a hell of a statement. But he said he's the hardest worker on the team, possibly already as a freshman. I mean, just put it this way. The kid is seeing legitimate snaps at one of the top high schools in America, at Thompson High School. So just think about that. So it's quite ridiculous. But Jeremiah Alexander is a name you're going to hear a lot. I was talking to Wes earlier today, and I don't know if I've seen a freshman blow up like this. I was around Deron Payne as a freshman, Marlon Humphrey as a freshman, Sean Evans as a freshman. I don't remember them getting this early. Perhaps it's one of the times, maybe, but multiple SEC coaches, including at least one head coach, told Thompson High School that they think he is already on track to be a first-round draft pick. The kid's a freshman in high school. So Jeremiah Alexander, remember the name, elite pass rusher already, getting a bunch of SEC offers. And yes, Alabama is very aware, but y'all know Bama's not going to be one of 50 offers on one day. You guys know, even if they're ready to pull the trigger, they're going to wait, and they're going to have their own day. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's a month from now. Maybe it's 2 years from now. Bama has more ability than anyone to wait and still get the kids that they want. So don't think Bama's ignoring a kid in their home state. I mean, heck, he plays with multiple Bama commitments. So, yes, Alabama, very aware. But Jeremiah Alexander, the next big thing in Alabama, I'll actually have a full story on him later this evening. Shameless plug on 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive list of comparisons for a kid and as a freshman. I did want to ask. I know I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but did you get a chance to talk to Dave? He went and saw Alfano at his thing today, or at his jersey. He looked good. I saw some video. Alfano looks good.
Dave was there. We'll hopefully have that up for you on the YouTube account pretty soon. But the thing about Alfano that stood out is it's just for Dave is his size, and Dave has seen him play in person this year. You guys can watch that right now if you want to check away from this one. But it's just his size. The kid is progressing. He's big, strong, big family, and just rising up the rankings. He's just one of those. Sometimes when you don't over scout kids like we do in the South, because we're at games every Thursday and Friday, and we're at practices. I was at a practice yesterday, and USC offered the kid before I ate dinner. Like, we see kids in the South because we know where to go and all that. When you go elsewhere, it's not like that. So it means that every single time you see those outliers, they look better and better, and you're just like, you're more blown away than the last time. In the South, we see them so much that, it's kind of the same, or if anything, you over-scout them and you start really nitpicking. I think we did that with Marlon Humphrey coming out of high school. I think we did that. The industry did that with Deron Payne. Yours truly didn't. But remember, the industry took him off of 5-star status, which was, I don't want to say that word, but it's really dumb. Really dumb. So you can over-scout and devalue a kid. I think it happened with Trevor Lawrence. Remember when the industry put Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence? That's over-scouting. That is just over-scouting, and Justin Fields was the new big shiny toy. And he jumped to number one for a brief moment. But when everyone came back down to earth, who was number one in the end outside of a certain four-letter? So they got it right there. But we can over-scout in this business. My point is, with Alfano, there's no over-scouting. It's just he's just getting seen a couple times a year, and that's it. So there's large gaps of time in between. And when you see a kid like that, and it's been 4 or 5 weeks, he looks a little bigger, he looks a little meaner, he looks a little bit more focused, and everything is just in the right direction. And that's where Alfano is. And look, I've said it for a while. Don't be shocked when that 5th star is next to his name. Y'all know I'm not a Bama homer. Y'all know I study this stuff every day. He has shown everything. Him and Justin Eboigbe are going to boom up the rankings all the way until January. And the beauty of it is Alfano is going to be in Texas playing against the best. So that's really going to be the only knock against him is who has he played? He's dominated everyone he's played against. So if he goes down there in Texas and does what I think he can do, that fifth star will be validated, argument over. That's the progression that he's been on.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's been trending towards that fifth star for a while.
Absolutely.
And he looks great. I've watched film from this year, and he's absolutely dominating kids up there, and he's doing everything that you would expect a 4/5 star guy to do at playing any type of competition, especially playing a little bit lower competition. You want a 4 or 5 star to dominate, and I think he's been dominating pretty good.
Yeah, there's a couple. Look, with guys like him and George Pickens, I know there's some off the field questions. I know that's part of the process. I mean, you're ignorant if that's not a part of the process because you're evaluating everything. But I will say that in the last several months and all season, we hear that things have very much been stabilized and under control. It was never like illegal stuff. It was never super crazy stuff, and I'm not going to get into it. But everything of late is very positive on and off the field with Alfano. I'll leave it at that for now. But I know that came up in the live chat. Look, that is always reevaluate. Like if certain guys were Saints, they'd be 5 stars. And some of those guys who aren't, and you scratch your head, sometimes that's where the answer lies. Now, we're not going to blast that out and slander the kid. But if it's true, it's true. So we don't like to get into it too much, and it's a touchy subject, but that's absolutely the case most of the time. But with Alfano, we do hear very positive things since the spring and summer circuit, where things at times did seem a little bit less than ideal. So just want to put that out there. Not to interrupt you, big guy.
Yeah, I mean, remember these kids are in high school. I mean, let's just remember that kids do things, and who knows. So, but it's good to hear. It's good to hear everything being positive coming out of there. That is good. And like I said, he's been trending for that 5th star for a while, and he's been dominating competition. So I think the next big. So we had some. There's a big visitor list from the weekend, from this past weekend. You hear any good news come out of visitors that were there this past weekend?
Yeah, Ishmael Sopsher is the guy. That's the one that everybody is curious about. That is the one that preseason we told you, okay, let's watch LSU season and let's go from there, right? LSU's having a great season. So you would think conventionally, okay, maybe that hurts Alabama, but it hasn't. Alabama's dominance up front, the emergence of Quinnen Williams, all of that I think bodes well for Ishmael Sopsher. We often talk about it. There is a chance. I'm just saying it's a chance. Don't misquote me, Bama Online. But there's a chance all these guys could be gone up front. So there's one thing to be impressed by Team A, but when Team B is equal or more impressive with potentially more playing time available, and you've been prioritized by the best college football coach of all time all together, pretty good look. Pretty good look. So I think Alabama's done all the right things. The key here is that family was on the trip alongside Sopsher. Remember, when you're recruiting a kid, you're recruiting everybody, especially when you get to these 5 stars. Evan Daniels taught me this when I first broke into the business. I was covering basketball. There was a recruit named Nerlens Noel. Okay, all my sources said he was going to Syracuse. All of them. You know which source I didn't have? Mom. And Evan Daniels taught me you have to go with the decider. Get a source with the decider. Beyond the kid, beyond the coach, beyond AAU, beyond everything else. And I had never spoken to his mother. And sure enough, he goes to Kentucky, and Mom wanted him at Kentucky all along. So that was my rookie moment in this business a long time ago. I don't even know if Nerlens Noel is playing. It was a long time ago.
He's in – I don't know where he is, actually.
Yeah, you have to go – the poor guy had a knee injury. It was tough. you have to go with the deciders. And when you get into the elite kids, there's more obscure and widespread deciders. But where that process begins is the family. So the fact it wasn't just Sopsher and his boys hanging out in Tuscaloosa. Family, multiple members of the family were on campus. And with a kid like that, that's something that's going to play throughout his recruitment. So the stability of Alabama, getting in with family there, and again, unofficial visit. So he's talking about officials. He's breaking down his list. I think it's at 7 right now. It'll get to 5. He'll take those trips. I'd be floored, y'all. I'd be floored if Bama doesn't get a visit. So Sopsher's going to be on campus at least one more time in an official capacity. And guess what? He's not going to come alone for that trip either. So there's a lot of positivity and optimism in Alabama's camp in regards to Sopsher. Look, the D-line recruitment has been very slowed, right? They haven't flipped Leal, the Texas A&M commitment, who's another riser like Alfano, by the way, have an unbelievable senior year. They hadn't flipped him. They've cooled a little bit on Fatui Tuitela. You hadn't heard his name in a while. Siaki Ika hasn't visited. So everything is pointed towards Sopsher as the priority. Get it done. And I think Bama's in that camp almost to the point, and I won't say all the way to the point, but almost to the point where they could be willing to sacrifice maybe being in it for some of those 4 stars if it means staying in it and having that much more of a shot at Ishmael Sopsher. So I don't know if they take a commitment before he decides, and that's a problem because he's a February decider. He's not an early guy. He's deciding on signing day. So you might have to wait all the way through to find out if you won or lose out for Sopsher. But again, there's positivity in Tuscaloosa before the visit and certainly after the visit that Bama's in good shape with Sopsher. So that was really the big on-campus story from this past weekend, especially, again, that it was an unofficial visit. Massive in this kid's recruitment because you're all but guaranteed to get him at least one more time on an official, which obviously just by, a calendar tells you it's closer to his decision. So all of that bodes pretty well for Alabama. And guess what? He said he'll be in Baton Rouge for the Bama game. So, yeah, he'll be an LSU recruit that day, but he can watch the game. He can be on the field. He can be close to Quentin Williams. He could see what he has to see with Alabama as well. Fairly close to Devontae Smith. They went to the same high school. He'll be on the field too. So all of that stuff helps Alabama. So we know he'll see Bama in action at least twice more this season. And that's when you're talking about a 5-star, that's about as ideal as can get. So rant over. All right, let's move into some of these other Q&A questions here while we got a sec. We're going to be all over the place today before we get to some picks. I know there's Clay Webb questions, George Pickens questions, Javaris Johnson questions, the IMG guys. Pretty much stable with all of them. I don't think there's anything that is one way or the other in terms of fluidity, motion, anything like that. I don't think there's any huge news with those guys. Clay Webb is taking visits. He was at Auburn last weekend, and he could be at Clemson this weekend or Georgia. Actually, Georgia might be off. But either way, he's going to continue to take visits. He's been to Bama more than anywhere else this year in terms of the season. Well, obviously, he's going to round that out. That kid has talked about giving everyone an equal shot the entire time. So I expect him to continue to do so. George Pickens, you got to get him back on campus. You got him on campus once, you got to do it again. The kid schedules visits and doesn't take visits. It's kind of what he does when the school is not named Auburn. So you got to keep at it with him. There was an outlet that ran a story today about him being a February signing day guy, and they ran the story like it was some big shock. But if y'all are loyal to us,
you already knew that.
Talking about the lack of academic prowess with George Pickens for quite some time. So there was no chance he was going to be an early guy. So that is something that is not news to us, but
big news.
Might have seen it elsewhere. Nothing new there, which means on the good side of it, there's time. There is time as the season matriculates forward. There is time with what Auburn does offensively, with what Auburn does with Jaden Hazelwood. All of these things that Auburn are really in Auburn's court could factor in to George Pickens because for the 5th time, him and Hazelwood are not going to be teammates at the next level. I would be pretty surprised if that occurred. So really nothing new with Pickens. Taking his time. He's going to talk about Bama. He's going to talk about FSU. He's going to talk about Georgia. I mean, there's the possibility of a swap is not out of the question just yet, although Miami does hold a lot of buzz with Hazelwood right now. So nothing really incredibly new with George Pickens unless you're not a Crimson and Blue Chips listener, and then maybe you found some new news today. Jacoby Dean, I haven't heard much new. He continues to reschedule visits. He didn't make it to Tuscaloosa, as far as I remember, for last week. So Bama's going to have to continue to try to get him on campus unofficially. Again, he already took his official. So you're going to hear buzz elsewhere with Florida State, with Georgia, probably most consistently. LSU is going to be in it. I would expect him to maybe be in Baton Rouge for the Bama game as well. The better LSU plays ahead of that point, the better for Bama, because that means more eyes are at the game. And if Bama does what most people think they're going to do, they can swing momentum, even though they're the road team in a game like that on the recruiting trail. So we'll see what Jacoby Dean does in terms of his visits. One of our guys is going to go see him on Friday. Not one of our CABC guys, one of my guys. So we'll have hopefully some information in the next couple of days with what Jacoby Dean is going to do. But he's going to take his officials. He's going to visit all these schools. And again, like Hank South, our buddy, says, if you talk to 5 different people on Jacoby Dean, you're going to get 5 different answers, or 5 different predictions. So we'll stay away from that. But we do know Bama is right in the thick of it for him. And based on the speculation and how widespread it is, that's about as good as it's going to get. So a couple updates on those guys. Nothing new on Evan Neal, Trey Sanders. The only official they're both scheduled for, still Alabama for the Iron Bowl, and that's good news on that front. So I know we went through some of the big names there in 2019. Williams says that Nerlens Noel turned down a $70 million contract last season and played for 5. I can't verify that, but wow, if true.
He's in New Orleans, so
the Pelican.
Yeah. What about Brian? What about Breeze? You hear anything coming out of his weekend in Tuscaloosa?
No, our guys caught up with him, and I didn't read it. So.
I didn't either, so I didn't do my job either, so it's all good.
That kid is a kid who has the means to travel.
Yeah.
So he's going to make a visit just about every week, and he's been to Penn State, Ohio State, Bama. He's going to, I would assume, continue to take those trips. He's a Maryland kid. He's been to Maryland. But the big news there was confirming he was on campus, which we did do, and it was his first game, his only game in Tuscaloosa. He had never experienced that before. So you could just imagine what that was like for him in an SEC atmosphere. I don't know if he's been to an SEC game. So that's something that is obviously in Alabama's favor at this point. But long way to go for a kid like that. He's a long way from deciding for sure.
Yeah. I just didn't know if you had heard anything. So move to a little bit of team news.
Let's get into it.
I've seen reports that the left guard competition has become open. Due to, Lester rolled an ankle. So I don't know. Saban says he doesn't know if he was 100% last game. But there are, I have seen reports that that the left guard position is open. So that's it's an interesting piece of information coming out of team news.
Well, what do you think about
that? If Lester's not 100%, then you have enough talent on that offensive line where if you got one guy that's not 100%, you can kind of plug and play. So it's one of those things where he's working through it, and if he's not 100%, I say don't put him out there if he's not 100%. So
what do you think?
Say what?
I asked you out of what you think.
Oh yeah, you think Lester's ready? No? Okay. So, yeah, we're, oh, well, thank you, sweetheart. So, In baby talk, that means I love dad. So sorry guys, I'm on babysitting duty tonight, so that's why she's joining me for our podcast tonight. So
We'll type that, get into the comments.
So but yeah, it's interesting. It definitely is interesting for a guy who's been the starter for 2 years to now all of a sudden it be open. I don't know if I guess you take it with a grain of salt if he's got an injury, but so we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, either way, how about the progress of Deontay Brown? I mean, this is a kid who in high school, everyone was like, man, frankly, people were saying the kid's going to be too fat to ever play at Alabama. I heard that a lot in the recruiting process. But Alabama believed in him, how he was a Mario Cristobal recruit. I actually watched one of his games with Cristobal, and he loved him. He thought the upside was out of this world, and he was fired up. Like Deontay pancaked the dude. This man was like ready to pancake me. Like it was great. So there's always been a ceiling. There's always been upside. And there's always been power at the point of contact. But I don't know how big he got, but there were questions about his frame and how much he could hold and how much he should hold. Well, he's worked on that. There's no doubt about it, and he has played in a lot of games this year, injury or otherwise, in terms of hard. So really cool to see the progress there. We just talked about Amari Kite and what happens if and when he gets to Alabama and buys in physically, nutrition, strength coach, all of that. And you look at and he's not a guy who has to do a certain thing or go a certain way. He's a guy who just needs to buy into it in general. Look at Deontay Brown's physical progress. I mean, it's got to be so encouraging for an offensive lineman and probably the parents of offensive linemen looking at Alabama to look at a guy like that 2 years ago versus now, night and day, shed a bunch of weight, and still just a mean SOB at the point of attack. Kind of like Lester. They're similar. So I could see why this conversation is popping up. Obviously, Lester older, more experienced, probably a little more fleet of foot, but in a phone booth, I mean, there are not many offensive linemen in America as intimidating and powerful as Deontay Brown, especially trimmed down. It's like he lost weight and he's more explosive. So he was already knocking everyone down. Now he's able to do that with a little bit of a quicker timeline. So kind of scary stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely looks better. And like you said, he's been in a lot of games this year. He's played a lot of downs. So I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't go ahead and take that spot if Lester is hurt, or even if Lester's not hurt. Even if they think that Deontay might be outperforming him, then he might be. So we'll see how it turns out this weekend, and we'll see who gets to start at left guard. I would imagine if he's healthy, it would probably be Lester, but I haven't seen anything confirming or denying that Lester's injury is keeping him out of practice. I saw that he was running with the twos actually. So it'll be interesting to see who lines up at that left guard position.
Yeah, and you might. I mean, there's no precedent here, so it's not like. I mean, look at quarterback, right? It's something we've talked about a couple times. There's no precedent. There's no like literal rotation. It's not like basketball where I'm gonna give this guy the majority of the minutes, but this guy's gonna play. There's no plan right there. So who's to say that that they don't kind of put them both in there, test Lester's ankle and or Deontay's readiness, being the guy from the jump. Again, we talked about this preseason, Kev. You have the ability to experiment. You have the ability to shuffle things around through the first 2 months of the calendar before you get to November if you're Alabama. Nick won't say it. No coach will say it. The players won't say it. But you do. You have a weaker schedule the first 2 months. Move some things around. Find out everything you need to know before November 3rd and thereafter, because it's going to get a little tough at that point. So maybe this is, the rolled ankle and the injury was kind of the Kickstarter that made the little light bulb go off and say, screw it. Let's give these guys a chance. Maybe you want to see what Deontay Brown looks like as the first team guy all week, preparation leading into the game, and how he actually comes out there in a hostile environment. Maybe this is partially experimental. I mean, I wouldn't put it past these guys. I don't know. I'd do it. I'd do it. They would hate me if I was coach because I would have all sorts of experiments going on. But if there's one that makes sense and there's experience involved, especially up front, you do it because, like we said preseason, with almost every position, you're going to need depth. You're going to need guys who can step in a pinch or potentially longer. Look at the national championship game. Nobody was talking about Alex Leatherwood pregame. But Jonah Williams gave up a couple of sacks and got hurt. And Alex Leatherwood came in and really stabilized the offensive line. So it would be nice if Bama knew that well before that, hey, we feel good if 70's in there. So this could partially be to explain for the potential shuffle on the offensive line, and I'm here for it. I think it makes Lester better, and it potentially heals him, and it certainly gets Deontay Brown better in a hurry, even if it's just mentally, which is obviously valuable. So.
Well, like Saban said when he was asked about it, they asked him about the Lester Deontay Brown competition, and in true Nick Saban fashion, he said, Lester's competing for a job every day. So, I mean, if that tells you anything, it's Nick Saban's consistent when it comes to talking about position battles. But it's definitely a competition up front. There's so much talent up front anyway for Alabama on the offensive line that, like we've said to begin the year, you could have there's bound to be at least one, maybe even two NFL draft picks that aren't starting for Alabama. So
just crazy.
I think it speaks to the depth of their offensive line and the fact that they have guys that are ready to step in, like Deontay Brown, if something is seriously wrong or if he's outperforming Lester. So.
Yeah. And Bama guys get the benefit of the doubt too. So you see backups every year getting drafted, whether it was last year in the secondary, years prior at wide receiver, undrafted guys. I mean, people are going to bring in Bama players. So, but the numbers this year could possibly be the highest in terms of non-starters on NFL rosters. I think. I mean, if you truly want to play devil's advocate, you could go. I mean, just the position, right? You can go Jalen Hurts, technically.
Yep.
So Josh Jacobs, technically. Yep. Multiple pass catchers. Irv Smith is eligible. Other guys are eligible. All of the offensive line eligible. Womack, all the guys beyond the starters there who are eligible would at least have a shot. So you could really play a hypothetical game there and get a bunch of names of guys who could mess around and make an NFL roster despite not starting considerable at Alabama. And the same thing, is true on defense to some degree. So it could be crazy this year is the point. Yeah. Also, at the core of this conversation, holy O-line depth. Like, how many other teams in the state would like this O-line depth?
Absolutely.
Well, Matt Womack started a bunch of games last year. Deontay Brown is basically a starter now. You got the other five guys. I mean, unbelievable depth for Alabama. And look at the O-linemen they're bringing in this year. I mean, the formula has worked, ladies and gentlemen. The formula has worked up front for Alabama. And I think the potential experimentation beyond any injury is a huge flex that backs up that fact.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you're talking O-line and the job that Cristobal did before, and then now that Brett Key has continued. I mean, the group they're bringing in this year is got two. Right now, the two committed that I think are possible NFL guys, and one of them definitely is going to be a potential for a high draft pick. They could probably be a day one starter, and he's not even the highest one ranked. So I definitely think there's some the O-line at Alabama is definitely taking monumental strides. I mean, I definitely think that if Auburn could pull 2 of those guys, I think they would. They'd be chomping at the bits to have 2 guys that are sitting on Alabama's bench right now. So
look at they've already tried multiple centers, and neither center has worked. So I know they would take Ross Piercebaker. They would take Emil Ekiyor, the freshman center who's not even playing. They take Josh Casher. He could play center there. He actually Josh Casher was very close. He was actually once committed to Auburn. I'm sorry. He's a guy that Bama flipped from Auburn. I'm sure they would have liked, in retrospect, to hold on to that commitment. So, yeah, there's no doubt that Auburn would take multiple guys from this Alabama offensive line if they were able to make trades. Hey, maybe one day we'll see college trades. I mean, a lot of these kids are bolting anyway. Why don't you just – it's like baseball. Like, a guy's not going to re-sign with you, like Manny Machado. Get rid of it and you get something back, right? Yeah. You at least get something back. So I think
find somebody that needs them for a year and then just get rid of them.
Got a couple of promising freshmen. Maybe
we're already pretty much playing free agency. I mean, you might as well add a trade into it there.
Yeah, man. Like, can you imagine trading a fifth-year senior who's going to start half of the season for you, and you get like a high school senior, redshirt freshman in return? That's truly the wild, wild west. But honestly, I wouldn't rule it out, man. The NCAA is going to mess this up as much as they possibly.
Oh, for sure.
Advantage as much as they possibly can on their end. So I wouldn't rule it out one day because as we're seeing with all of these kids going to 2, 3, 4, 5 different schools, it ain't that hard to send your transcript somewhere and get enrolled into classes. It's not as hard as it used to be. The thought of transferring multiple times mentally for somebody who's, I guess, getting old is just stressful because you got to transfer and you got to get your transcripts and you got to wait, time, add drop time, pick classes, all of that. It's too much for me. But with the rate that we're seeing it, apparently it's not that big of a deal for other folks. So I wouldn't rule it out, honestly.
I mean, I'm sure, and you got to think these guys have full staffs that are
doing that for them.
Yeah, so I mean, let's be honest. If Jalen Hurts goes to transfer to wherever he's going to think about transferring, there's going to be someone on that staff that's going to, let me get Jalen's transcripts. Let me get blah, 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 blah. Let me make sure he's eligible, blah, 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 blah. There's going to be somebody responsible for that.
I agree. So, yeah, what else we got in team news, Kev? I know Tua's health is a big deal. Are people done with that, or does the pulse of the Crimson Tide Nation still worry about that 2 days away from at Tennessee?
I mean, I think people are still a little worried about it. I know there's been a lot of talk. We asked the question, and we got a lot of sit Tua, let him rest, make sure he's healthy for the rest. And as much as I thought about it, I still think that I'm with the sit him, let him rest, and then we'll go from there. Let him rest, get healthy, and we'll go to Baton Rouge and see how he can do fully healthy.
Yeah, I think I've always been in the sit-him camp, really from the moment that he slid and didn't get up right away. I was already like, sit him next week. Just sit him.
Yeah, especially because it was non-contact.
Right.
Anytime, and you know this as well as I do, that anytime you have any injury that's non-contact, like don't mess with it, because
news VA right there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been told multiple times that non-contact injuries can be the worst ones. So it's just I saw the slide. I saw him wince. He didn't get up. I said, go ahead and rest. Get him out I let him rest and all that. So I think he'll rest this week. I think he'll rest, honestly.
Yeah, I'm on the other side. I have long been in the sit him camp, and I thought that Bama would entertain it. But the more I think about it, I don't think they're going to sit him. I don't think they're going to sit him. That's a good sign physically, that he's healthy enough. But I just Nick doesn't lean towards precaution, and that could be looked at in a lot of ways, good and bad. But he typically doesn't lean towards precaution. How many stories do we hear of guys who played at Alabama who say, "Oh man, I played with this, I played with that. I came back a little too early with this, or what have you." So that makes me think that maybe what Bama fan Dave wants to happen, and he's not with us today, is maybe you get two out there early, you get the lead that you've seemingly gotten in every game this year, and you get him out of there. I think that's become the more realistic scenario. I think the thought of him not playing at all is become the least likely scenario. Although I still believe that is the right call to make. I don't think Nick would want to do that perceptionally, very publicly in a rivalry game. I don't see him doing it. Nick's a politician, man. Don't let him fool you. Nick's a politician, and I don't think he plays that card.
Yeah. I mean, those are good points. I just, I think you save him, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see come Saturday, and we'll see who trots out there. Just like this is the conversation we had all summer. We're like, we'll see who trots out there. See who trots out there day one. I feel like we're right back in there. We'll see who trots on out there.
That other quarterback blew out Tennessee each of the last couple of years without 13 behind him.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it won't be. I don't think it'll be that big of an issue.
They're confident though. Tennessee's confident. They got dudes. There's no doubt about that. Tennessee has guys on that field who will walk out there that Bama legitimately wanted on their roster. If you go to Nigel Warrior, Trey Smith, Jonathan Kongbo, well, he's hurt now. There's several guys, Shy Tuttle, that Alabama recruited very, very consistently that they just lost on. To Butch Jones, who is now on the other side of it. Wonder what the week's been like.
Team news, did you see that he's traveling as an analyst, by the way?
Oh, you got to do that.
Yeah.
You got to do that. I mean, poor Butch Jones, hopefully it's not too sunny and he won't be too warm, but that man's going to be on camera all day. And you got to do it. You got to let him. I don't know. Again, Nick's a politician. I'm not. I would let Butch Jones run us out of the damn tunnel. Let's go.
Put him out. Have him carrying the Strip A flag.
Out there with the flag and the high top and just roll with it. Just roll with it, clapping it up, hyping up the crowd. I would go full a-hole mode if I was Butch Jones, and I would love for Nick to let that happen, but there's zero chance that he lets that happen. So
he'll probably be in the booth, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen him on sidelines at home games, but if he's traveling to Tennessee, then I'd put money on it that he's in the booth.
Yeah, I hope he goes and pets the dog and all of that. Like, do you think he'll get the pregame treatment that Dan Mullen got, where there was partial, "Why'd you leave us?" and partial, "We still love you"?
No.
That or straight boos and hate?
Straight boos. They're gonna boo Butch Jones. Like, there's no
circumstance there.
No, I don't think there's a way he goes in there and gets any type of love after.
Maybe Bama blows out UT, and on the way out, he makes something memorable happen.
Oh, I hope he lights a cigar on the 50-yard line. I hope he lights it up right on the 50. So team out of that, I mean, that was really my piece of team news. Was I saw the left guard going on, and I don't have any other team news.
All right, well let's jump to picks. You want to do it?
Jump to picks, and let's see what we got on our slate for this weekend.
We could just start since we're already on the topic.
Bama. You want to start with Bama, Tennessee, and we'll move on from there. So let's go SEC.
Bama's not covered. Now it's over.
All right, let's see. Good Lord. All right. Over under 57, Tennessee plus 29.
29. These numbers in Vegas, man, unbelievable.
Vegas has been on fire though. Like I don't know how they do it, but
yeah, they're like I don't know how they consume all of the information and come out with these numbers that are so darn dead on. What was Missouri 28 and Bama won by 29?
Yeah.
Look, Missouri's better than Tennessee and Bama won that game by 29 points. So you know what? You know what? Screw it. Tua's gonna play. They're gonna light it up.
You're gonna take it. You're gonna take it.
And Jalen's gonna play 2 straight quarters and dominate and do the one thing that maybe Tennessee's not equipped to handle: a mobile quarterback. And I think that actually goes to Bama's advantage. Their best pass rusher is injured in Jonathan Kongbo, and it is a formula for points. Take Bama, lay the points, and take the over, which I don't know if I said beyond the Ole Miss game for Alabama. Take the over. High scoring affair in Neyland Stadium. Nick does it for Butch, baby.
Let's go. All right. Got me hyped up on the first one.
People got their phones like the opposite of what he said.
All right, so next game, a noon kickoff. Poor noon. Oh, there's no information, but it's Tulsa at Arkansas.
Oh gosh, take Tulsa. Ride Golden Hurricane.
1-5 Tulsa versus 1-6 Arkansas.
Almost made a huge upset last week. What was that, USF?
They almost beat USF. They should have beat USF if their coach knows how to run timeout at the end of the game. Instead, he played not to lose, so he lost. So
I will. That usually means, especially on a bad team like a 1-5 team, that usually means that you're deflated. When you get that tease, and then at the last minute they pull the rug from under you, you're done. You're done mentally. You're done physically. And this is at Arkansas, correct?
Yeah, it's at Arkansas.
They need a blowout win. That chair didn't just move by itself. Our buddy took it. Look, it's at Arkansas. They need that type of win. Chad Morris has been close, it feels like, in a lot of games. They need a comfortable blowout win. We thought maybe early in the season it would be North Texas, and North Texas went in there and beat them. They're not going to let that happen again with Tulsa, who's not as close to as good as North Texas, who's got UAB, by the way. I'm in Birmingham. So, you know what? Give me Arkansas. I don't care about the points. High-scoring affair. Tulsa does get on the board, but Arkansas covers and takes care of business. And finally, for the first time, maybe in addition to that A&M game, they look like an SEC team beating a cupcake at your home field.
Nice. All right, next, and another noon kick for Auburn.
Sad day. It's a sad day.
It's a noon kick in Oxford, Mississippi. Auburn, Ole Miss. 62.5 is the over-under. Ole Miss plus 3.5. So there's going to be a ton of points, and no one's playing defense.
Yeah, well, I think the key is if Auburn will play offense. Gus said this week there will be tweaks. Could that mean a change of quarterback? Could that mean more young guys on the field? I think maybe both. Either way, getting young guys on the field, those receivers, Anthony Schwartz, Seth Williams, a quick game, all will benefit. And their recipe, the most consistent recipe in the country in 2018, beyond Alabama's offensive consistency, has been the lack thereof of Ole Miss. I can run 100 yards on Ole Miss right now. With Auburn, what is it? Ole Miss plus 3?
Plus 3.5.
I've never said a super rich coach needs a game like this less than a year after signing an extension, but Gus needs this. Auburn needs this. And against conventional wisdom, Auburn has shown up okay in big games in their mind. We all know what happened at Alabama or against Alabama last year. Georgia before that. LSU this year, they showed a lot of progress early on before falling apart late. Auburn can get up for a game that they feel they need to win. I don't know what happened against Tennessee. Maybe they overlooked them. That was a noon kick, which is probably not a good omen for them. But I think Auburn will get up for this game. They have so much more talent than Ole Miss. And in college, that will not be on the wrong side 2 weeks in a row against an inferior team. So Auburn wins comfortably, double-digit victory, but a ton of points. Take that over. 62 does not scare me because the Auburn defense has shown a little bit more leaks there in the back seven. So I think Ole Miss does put up points. The noon kick benefits them, but eventually Auburn takes over, gains control of the game. And the young guy, Seth Williams in particular, helps them secure an SEC road win.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
The best bus is not off the rails just yet.
No. Okay.
Right.
4 p.m. kick, Memphis, Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no spread lines on that one.
Your girl C-Rob just said, Memphis, Missouri.
Memphis is in trouble. They've been definitely underperforming this year.
Talked about Tulsa nearly upsetting a team they weren't even supposed to be in the game with and falling short and what that does to you. Memphis is in the same exact boat. They did that with UCF, the defending national champs, right? So if you couldn't beat the champs at home with a double-digit lead late, you're not going to do as well on the road. And Missouri played well against Alabama. Locke will not be that bad. He will miss some throws against Memphis because of his secondary. He'll get his receiver back, playing with a heavy heart after the unfortunate passing of his father. His top receiver will be back. And that defense showed a couple of things against Alabama, I thought. I love that front seven. Give me Terry Beckner on any team. Give me Trevez Hall on any team, like those guys. Let's go with Missouri. The points won't scare me.
All right. The 7 o'clock kick in Baton Rouge, the 5th ranked Tigers taking on the 22nd ranked Bulldogs of Mississippi State. Over under 45. Spread is Mississippi State plus 6.5.
I haven't liked Mississippi State all year. At all. They haven't impressed me on offense in any way. Maybe a little bit for Kansas State very early in the season, but Kansas State hasn't been worth the crap since then. They weren't the team we thought they were preseason. So basically, Mississippi State's offense hasn't impressed at all. Their defense has flashed. They'll do well against LSU, but LSU has too many athletes. It's at home. You mentioned Death Valley at night, which is always going to pique my interest. This is a different LSU team. Edo, Burrow, these guys are cool. These guys don't panic. The Florida game, they dropped the ball late, but it wasn't desperation that cost them that game. It doesn't feel desperate with LSU right now. So I think they take care of business. I think they do their part leading up to the Bama game November 3rd. And that means taking care of an inferior Mississippi State team. It's at LSU. It's at night. You know the bullets in the chamber for Mississippi State. There's no surprises there. I think there are legit question marks with that coaching staff right now based on their personnel. And I think LSU takes advantage. LSU double digits at home, somewhere in the neighborhood of 27-17, which would make you not take the over. So take the under. Under, but LSU minus the points.
All right. And just a little tidbit on that game. LSU is wearing a new alternate uniform. Obviously, I like uniform.
Based off of that.
So they're wearing it's a purple chrome helmet that changes to gold in the light. Looks really fire on social media.
Kev's uniform watch coming to Crimson and Blue Chips very soon.
Yeah, and so they're wearing that alternate, and it's to honor the 1918 silent season where a lot of LSU people left school to fight in World War I. I didn't know LSU was that big of a military school, but apparently there's the thin purple line, and that's it's been a big military thing, and they take pride in it. And so they're wearing those jerseys. It's got no nameplate to honor to honor the unknown soldiers that were lost from that group. And I think it's a really cool jersey. I think it's a really cool setup that they got going on. And like John said, uniform watch coming soon. The last SEC game of the weekend, the 7:30 kick in Kentucky. Kentucky Vandy, over under 46.5. Vandy plus 11.5.
Oh, Vegas got me on this one. The points, I think the points will be up, actually. It's not the total that worries me. I would take the over without much hesitation. I think Kentucky will run all over Vandy like Florida did. And but I do think that Vandy's offense can move the ball on Kentucky. So I do think points won't be an issue in this game. But would you say it was 11 points that Kentucky was giving?
11.5.
Damn half. Who could, like, you could see that as like a 31-20 game. But now that would mean that that Vandy is the right pick. So in that light, I'll go with my gut there, and I'll go with Vandy plus 11.5. But I do take the over. I do think points will be a little more plentiful than one would expect in a Kentucky game, because they've played everybody very well defensively. But Vandy's got a nice balanced attack. I like what they're doing offensively, and they should have beat Florida last week. We haven't talked about that much, but they should have beat the Gators. They just they coughed it up, man.
Yeah, they coughed it up and they stalled late.
And can Kentucky keep rolling like this? I mean,
I hope so. I like it.
I do too, and I'm not saying they don't win the game, but I mean, we haven't seen Vandy bring that Notre Dame effort in a few weeks. Maybe this is it. SEC game, SEC East game at Kentucky, right?
Yeah, at Kentucky.
I like that. Vandy has no home field advantage, no home field atmosphere. It's almost like they play better on the road. They've contested on the road a lot in the last 2 years, including at Notre Dame this year, which is kind of their banner moment, even though they lost. They bring some of that swag to Kentucky. They hold Benny Snell down a little bit more than people expect. Derek Mason will have a plan for that. Derek Mason's not going to let something conventional beat you, or one guy, I would think. So I do think Benny Snell gets off to a slower start, and Vandy does some things. They learn from their mistakes from last week. Again, we talk about teams getting close and having the rug pulled from underneath them, hurting them when they're truly inferior. Vandy, Kentucky, not a huge talent gap there, like we talk about with UCF Memphis and with Tulsa USF and UCF Memphis. Not the same talent disparity. I think it's a little bit more even, minus the Benny Snells of the world. I still have questions with that Kentucky quarterback. I still wonder how prolific he can be if somebody can take away Benny Snell.
Yeah, but can anyone take away Benny Snell? Is the good question. I think
Jonathan Allen meme, Alabama can.
Yeah.
Well, the meme is Alabama does, but you get it.
Yeah. So that was the last of the SEC games.
We'll do game though, so we might see it.
Yeah.
Kentucky and Florida feel like they can roll into Atlanta this year. So
yeah,
the most likely scenario, but Kentucky's in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and Florida fans are drunk too. So, so couple top 25 games this weekend. There's a couple good ones. Number 6, Michigan at number 24, Michigan State. The over-under is 41, and the spread is Michigan State plus 7.
Of course it's 7. It would have been 6.5. Take that no-brainer. At Michigan?
At Michigan State.
Oh, crap.
It's in East Lansing.
You know, Michigan State does this every year. They get somebody. They got Penn State already, right?
Yeah.
You know what? I've liked this Michigan team all year. They stave off Michigan State at Michigan State. I see them doing it. by more than a touchdown. I would have taken 6.5 and 6 for sure, but not 7. So I think Michigan wins the game, but Michigan State certainly covers. And you know what? Give me the over there as well. Michigan State's defense has been good, not great, and I think Michigan is just getting better every week. And Michigan's starting to put together a nice little resume on their own. And at some point, Harbaugh's got to win some big games. He did it against Wisconsin. He didn't do it against Notre Dame. And he continues to play on the right side of that this year with Shea Patterson, who's my preseason Heisman pick, for goodness sake. So I gotta go with Michigan. Go blue.
All right. There's not too many other big games in the top 25. Next big one, the third ranked Tigers are back in action against the 16th ranked and undefeated NC State.
Yeah, that's going to be. I mean, NC State undefeated. First of all, phenomenal. Good job by that crew. But no, it ain't this year for NC.
The over/under is 56, and the spread is NC State plus 17.5.
Now that is a big ass spread. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Clemson can light it up. I'm not as familiar with NC State's defense this year, and NC State hadn't played anybody yet as well. But that is a big spread. That scares me. I think these are maybe the two best quarterbacks in the ACC. Actually, I'll say it. These are the two best quarterbacks in the ACC, with no disrespect to Duke's Daniel Jones, who I haven't watched a ton of, but I know he's doing some big things. So I do think points will come out of this game. And I'm talking talent for those of you who are going to bitch about Trevor Lawrence. I'm talking about talent, NFL talent. A lot of people like Ryan Finley this year as a top 2 or 3 quarterback, and we all know the trajectory of Trevor Lawrence. I do think points will come out of this game. I do think Clemson is vulnerable in the back 7. Their front 4, as good as anybody, probably the best in America, especially when it comes to rushing the passer, which makes me worry about Finley, who I just talked about and praised. But the back 7 is not the same Clemson back 7 that made the Alabama game last year tight for a long time, and the back 7 that did give Bama some problems the 2 years prior. It's not that group. So I do think points can come out of this game. So I would take the over, a 17 with 2 undefeated teams. And NC State's coming off a bye week, correct?
Yeah, they both are.
They both are. So those guys can construct a plan defensively in principle, and that could keep the scoring down early. We've seen Clemson get off to slow starts a lot this season, so I could see that happening again, but I do think they eventually open it up. They do win this game comfortably, but 17 is too high a price to pay. So take the over, but take the Wolfpack in cover.
All right, sounds good. Just a real quick, I was flipping back and forth between the live chat and our picks. We got a hello from Japan.
What up, Japan?
So I had to stop and say that. We got a hello from Japan, RTR, from Quentin Young from watching in Japan. I just thought that was cool. So
Quentin, are you military? Either way, thank you for stopping by. But if you're military,
let us know. The only other top 25 game that I like is the game day game. Finally, game day goes to Washington State, and Washington State people lost their mind when the buses rolled in, and because they mail the flag all over the country. And
isn't there like an advisory though, because there's going to be so many people in a small area for the first time ever in Pullman, and yeah, that's amazing. We never games literally somewhere every week. So.
It's pretty cool. So, I saw the thing last year. They mail the flag to different alumni of Washington State so that they can make sure that it makes its appearance on game day, because it's made like 200 plus straight appearances on game day. So they mail it around the country. And finally, for a change, that it's coming to Pullman. The 25th ranked Cougars of Washington State are playing the 12th ranked Ducks. The over-under is 68, and the spread is Oregon +3. I mean,
I think Oregon would win by more than 3, and Oregon is getting points.
Oregon's getting points.
Yeah,
Oregon's ranked 12th.
This
and they're getting points.
This is the Mario Cristobal-led Oregon Ducks. Look what they did to Washington. They should have beat Stanford. They should be undefeated in a penciled-in college football playoff team today. Do they stay there? Probably not. But that's where they should be today. This is a disciplined team that has a lot of weapons, and they want to run the football. We think Oregon, and we think a million yards, throwing the football, all this stuff. They can ball control you to death. And they do it with the quarterback too. So this isn't your daddy's or your older brothers or your friend's Oregon. This is a new Oregon. They look awesome and just as awesome as they did before. But it's a different team. I've watched them a lot this year. Ducks roll, maybe double digits. So them getting points, that's easy money. But that over-under is 68. That's...
Yeah, 68. You heard it. 68.
That's a little rich. That's a little rich for my blood. I would probably go under there, but give me the Ducks. The Ducks getting points. Give me the Ducks. Justin Herbert needs a game where he's not supposed to do well, and he goes out there and shows off the arm. Maybe that is this game. But Washington State's defense, I've watched them a couple of times. They leave something to be desired, and I think Oregon exploits that. In Pullman, despite game day, despite the hype, despite the warnings that have been given by local authorities, give me the Ducks, but do go under. That's not going to be an old school Pac-12 game. It'll be a newer age Pac-12 game where both schools are in the 20s or something like that. I don't think it gets close to 68. That's way too much. So that'll wrap up our picks for the week. I guess we can run through some of these questions before we wrap up. I don't know how long we've been going, but pretty long. So thank you guys. And again, Quentin, please let us know where in Japan and why, if you don't mind. Other questions have been a lot of recruiting related. Marcus Banks, cornerback, decommitted from LSU. Bama heavily on his radar. So keep an eye out with the defensive backfield. There's a lot of corners and combo guys out there for Alabama. Noah Pola-Gates from Arizona. Marcus Banks was, I believe, a Texas kid, formerly committed to LSU. He's out there. Tyreek Stevenson's still out there. Kyer Elam's still out there. A lot of big-time name defensive backs still in the conversation for Alabama. I think they go pretty slow at defensive back, so don't expect anything pretty soon, although the decommitment there from Banks is pretty interesting. I know a lot of other schools feel good. Jeff Carter, the Texas A&M commit, I know Bama likes plenty. Javarius Johnson question, is he moving up the board? He's been to Bama 3 times this year. He's the fastest wide receiver in Alabama. Those things warrant consideration, but until Bama offers, how can he be moving up the board, right? They need to pull the trigger with an offer there if they're going to be in the game. It is something he would listen to my understanding. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. Again, another Hewitt Trussell Husky. He's the only one committed to Auburn. 4 others committed to Alabama there. George Pickens questions we answered. Same thing on Nakobe Dean as well as Brian Brees. Willie Parr wants to know thoughts on the trend of Polynesian prospects in 2019 leading towards Alabama. Siaki Ika, Noah Pola-Gates, Henry To'o as well. Of those, Pola-Gates and To'o, the ones to keep the closest eye on. Ika's involved as well. But as we said when we talked about Ishmael Sopsher, the thing's going to go slow with the interior guys. I think Bama is much more willing to lose a guy or two if it means getting Sopsher in terms of showing the love and when they're willing to accept the commitment. Not saying Ika is not a take, but we do know Sopsher's been high on the board for much longer, and I think that could take precedent if it comes down to those two. Obviously, that's a hypothetical at this point. There is an interesting Polynesian trend to Alabama. We obviously have seen it over the last several years, and the biggest boom and the biggest name, obviously, is that lefty who's rocking number 13. So good question. there. I think that's something that you see continue. Cameron Latu joined last year. Ale Cajo joined Alabama this year. There's been a strong, really since Isaac Luatua a couple of 5, 6, 7 years ago now. There's been a Polynesian influence, but the main reason why before Tua even was Tosh Lupoy, and he's obviously still on staff. So that's always a big ace in the hole for Alabama there. D-line, a huge need. William Lee says, I agree with you, but Bama's going to be precautionary and take that thing pretty slow in terms of recruiting. Is Banks a take for Bama? I don't have that answer right now, William. I would assume he is. But again, I do think DB is a limited spot, maybe one spot in the end. So I don't know how willing they would be to end that conversation, especially with a guy like Noah Polagates taking his own recruitment very, very slowly. It doesn't feel too similar to Dean Lyman, other than the fact that maybe one addition is the final number. That is potentially exactly the same, but the process of which to get there, I do think is a little different, DT, compared to defensive back. George L. wants to know, is Evan Neal a sure thing? No, there's no such thing in recruiting as a sure thing. Miami is a legitimate threat to Alabama, something to monitor. But again, the only official set to Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl. I do think Bama is the more likely destination as of right now. So scrolling the chat, that looks like was the last recruiting question. So I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we will wrap up. Your boy's got to get some dinner in his belly. Producer Kev, we want to thank him and Collins for making her second appearance on Crimson and Blue Chips. Thank you to all listening, watching right now. Please hit that subscribe button to get us growing, to spread the word a little bit. Do so with your friends and family. It's a busy time at CABC. I promise you, we got a lot of things cooking behind the scenes. So stay tuned. We're hoping to expand as much as possible to bring you our opinions, thoughts, hypotheticals, shenanigans, all of it a little bit more consistently for you. That is our goal. So stay with us. Crimson and Blue Chips, all platforms. You're obviously familiar with YouTube, Twitter at CABC Pod, Instagram at CABC Pod, Facebook, Crimson and Blue Chips, and of course on iTunes as well, for those of you who don't have time to watch our beautiful mugs every single day. Thanks, everybody, for Producer Kev and Collins. God bless. Garcia out.